Welcome to the Everything Under the Sun podcast. I'm Ethan Lemieux.
I'm Kaden Lemieux. Today's guest is Bonifay Police Chief Johnny Whitaker.
Johnny, thank you for joining us today. I'm glad you could be a part.
Shoot, thanks for inviting.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty cool.
Yep. So, Chief Johnny Whitaker, born and raised in Holmes County, Florida, retired from the Florida Highway Patrol after nearly 30 years in law enforcement career. Currently serves as police chief of Bonifay Police Department. He's a husband, he's a father, and most of all, he's a rodeo clown. You got a few hats in the bag right there.
Man, there's a lot there, but most of all, a grandfather. Getting old.
Yeah.
Getting old.
We all are. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into law enforcement and what drew you to this field?
Shoot, man, you're looking at, like you said, 30 years. It's kind of hard to fall back on those whole 30 years and just say what was the one thing. And there was a lot of people that contributed to my career. So the previous chief, or not the previous chief, but the chief back in the day when I was a teenager was Dennis Lee, who became the sheriff of the county in the early 90s or late 90s. And he was a longtime friend of the family. And back when I was growing up, my dad, Sheriff Lee, and a group of guys in the community, we rode horses every weekend. And that was our thing. That was their thing. And every year, rodeo weekend, we rode our horses to town. And it was just a group of people within the community that kind of stuck together and were good friends. So I was just riding around town one day trying to figure out where my life was going to go, where I needed it to be. And I seen Chief Lee then sitting beside the road there right there around Sun's Tire. And I just pulled in there behind him, told him I needed a job. And luckily, he gave me my first job in 1994 with this agency. That's the beauty part about it is after my career, I circled back to where I started. So Dennis Lee gave me my start in 1994 at this agency. And I was just talking to a guy today. A lot of people can't understand how we did it back then. My starting salary was $12,000 a year.
Man.
No insurance, no retirement. Wow. So you had to be dedicated or be called to this profession to make it. I mean, It was, if it was all about the money, nobody would have done it back then. Nobody really still do it today. So that's where my career started, how it got started. And I actually worked for Dennis when he became the sheriff for a little while. So he's been a part of our family, the Whitaker family, for years. Yeah. The Whitakers, Lees. I mean, there's several families there that grew up together, had good times together, and here we are.
Yeah.
31 years later now. So, because it was January of 1994 when I started with them. So we're January 2025.
Flying by.
You'll see. You'll see just how quick it flies by, I promise.
What did that first job look like, part of the police department that you had?
It was a 5-man department. I was driving an 85 box Chevrolet with a Street Hawk light bar on the top that if you stopped at the red light, sometimes you'd have to reach out the window and tap it to make sure it was still spinning. You could hear that car literally, because back then everybody was race car drivers. Everybody was that's what law enforcement was all they like to do is drive fast, shoot guns, and chase people. So our 1985 box Chevrolet with a 350 in it had a carburetor on it. So what I do, I take it to the house and we changed some things and made it a little faster and sound a little different. So I could leave there, the Waffle House in the interstate, and you could hear it for a while, because when you flip the breathers upside down on them or turn the cap upside down, you could hear it sucking the air to the carburetor. So it was fun. It was funner back then than it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you get away with that today?
No, absolutely not. If Dennis Lee actually knew what we'd done back then, I probably wouldn't have made it through then. So I mean, it was. I've had a good career. I mean, it's. I told somebody at the sheriff's office here in Walton one day. I said, at the end of my career, I can honestly tell you I done it my way. I mean, I lived and played by the rules. We had a good time, and it's been fun. Yeah. It's the front seat to the greatest show on earth for me. I mean, it's wild.
So how has the field of law enforcement changed since those days working for Dennis Lee?
Shoot, back then it was nobody had cell phones. I mean,
that's true. Didn't think about
everybody wasn't setting their video, and so even the law enforcement side, the video cameras didn't really come along till probably 5 to 10 years in my career. That's when everybody started putting video cameras in the cars, and then shortly after that, the camera started emerging on the cell phones. So there just wasn't a whole lot going on back then as far as things you could video. I mean, there's a lot I would have loved to have videoed back then just to have for my career.
Yeah.
And it's everybody sees everything now, the good and the bad, and that's everywhere you go. It's a lot of people say it's here, it's there, but for the most part, everybody here in Bonifay, Holmes County, and our surrounding smaller counties are good, legit law enforcement officers. Now, there's things that happen that you have to adjust on as you go throughout your career, and you learn how to be that professional law enforcement officer. So the first five years of it, you just want to go home where you can go to bed and wake up and come back to work. Yeah. So now it's times are a little different. I mean, the drug problem is really not. It wasn't as prevalent back then as it is now. And a lot of the drugs have emerged throughout my career, and the changes in the drugs and the style of the drugs, and everybody lacing this with that and that with this and mixing this. I mean, it was just something that was unheard of back then. I mean, you had your marijuana smokers, you had people that done the meth and cocaine, but now today, y'all are young enough, y'all seen and been a part of the evolving of the drug trafficking world. So that has changed considerably in my 30-year career. Now you hear about teens having parties and dumping they'll raid mom and daddy's medicine cabinet, dump it in a bowl at a house, and they'll walk through and pick up a pill and take it just to see what the effects are. And I don't know what they call it, but that's a lot that has changed throughout the drug world and what we deal with here.
Do you think there's been a driving factor behind the way that drugs have evolved over the years and how much has grown the use of it, I guess?
Well, a lot of it's just the money behind the drugs. I mean, that it's a good paying outfit that sells that. I mean, you look at the drug cartels and all that pushes all that stuff across the borders and everywhere else. They make a substantial living off of people that's having an issue.
Yeah.
They're preying on somebody else's downfall.
Yeah. And
making money off of it, and it's changed. It's changed a lot, and the money that's made off of it is it's the devil's money to me.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. If you can make it and spend it with good conscience, you're not a human being.
Yeah.
So because somebody else has lost their life off of it, it's cost them their family. It's cost them moms and dads, and it's cost them careers. So a lot of it is more the higher tiers than it is the lower tiers, because the lower tier of drug use is nothing more than somebody that's struggling and has an issue, and they've progressed from either marijuana or something else, whether it's pills, marijuana, whatever it is. They progress from lower level drug activity to a higher scale drug, and it costs them quite a bit. So I hate to see people get on it, but I mean, there's consequences when you do.
Yeah.
But I think Sheriff Tate and everybody at the sheriff's office or this county has done a good job trying to create some programs and get everybody some help that are struggling with addiction. So that's been a blessing to this county and the city of Bonifay. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we're not just putting them in jail and leaving them. We're actually giving them
ways out.
Yeah, I mean it's in the early years there were no places to go. There were no rehabs or Christian organizations to reach out to send people to get over their addiction. Nowadays it's pretty common. Some people go to rehab and make it, some people won't. But it's the drugs that's here now, whether it's the fentanyl, the meth, or whatever it is, you have to change your whole perspective on life. And you also got to change your friends. You can't go to rehab, come home, and
go right back to
wake
it.
up the next morning and go hang out with the same guys you were smoking with 6 months ago. Because one of my football coaches always said, if you lay with the dogs long enough, you're gonna get the fleas.
Yeah,
it's true.
And it's true. I mean, you hang around with somebody that smokes or does illegal narcotics, eventually you're gonna experiment with it, test it, or fall off the wagon and go back to doing what you were doing last year. So
yeah, and that's how most of the people I've talked to that have fought that battle and then got free from it and sobered up, they've all said it just started as a social thing.
Yeah.
Like whether it was just them going to a party on a Friday night and just sitting around drinking, and eventually just led to more and more to where it just completely destructed their lives.
And that's why they consider or call it, and you'll hear a lot of people refer to it as the devil's drug. It's you have to sit there and deal with the problems and everything you've done to your family, because the people that are using that are stealing from mom, dad, brother, sister. So it changes the family's aspect or their outlook on that particular brother, sister, aunt, uncle, or whatever, because they're stealing from them. And it tears families apart. And my mom always said that's just the devil. So that's why a lot of them consider it the devil's drug, is it just destroys families and human beings. So it's a long road for those folks.
Would you say that's the majority of the crime in our area?
I wouldn't say that's a majority of the crime, because it's a choice to a certain degree. Not the possession is the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that lifestyle leads to criminal activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just illegal to possess it, illegal to use it. And unless you get caught with it, there's really nothing we can do. So that drug atmosphere leads to other crimes, the thefts, the burglaries, the domestics, all that other stuff. So it's a direct link to criminal activity. It's not just the drug itself. It's just that drug creates that mindset that I've got to have some more, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to go get it, or that steal something, rob something, or take it. They don't care. They just want that next fix, because they've got used to not feeling anything. And when you're coming off of it, you get that feeling, and you get that realization that I just done this, this, and this to my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, and then I got to get rid of this feeling. I don't like it, and they'll go find that next hit, and it takes them out of reality back to their fantasy land. Drugs create crime.
Yeah.
The use of narcotics creates crime.
Yeah.
The possession of it is a crime. But just the mere possession does not create a robbery.
Yeah.
The possession does not create the domestic violence or the fight between the husband, the wife, or the mom and dad.
Yeah.
So it's just a direct link. Yes, it's a crime to possess. It's a crime to sell. All that's a crime. But a majority of our crimes are committed based off of the drug world, the drug atmosphere. It just creates that monster, I guess.
So what is some of the most common things y'all see on a day-to-day basis as for crime? I guess the most calls y'all get.
Ours is you'll have some burglaries, thefts, gas skips. Here lately, it's been pretty good. I mean, we had a strong arm robbery back in October. The following week after that, we had a double homicide. So, and there again, we go back to the world of drugs and prescription drugs and all that. Not saying that any of that was drug related, but there's a history there.
Yeah.
You know, that somebody in their right mind would not have done what occurred that night or that day, and it's wild.
Yeah.
At the stuff that the narcotics and the drug atmosphere or world creates. I don't know if I got off of that question or off topic or not, but
No, that pretty much answered what I was
that's one
asking.
of those our crime varies. I mean, one day you may not answer a call here, but that's the community we live in. That's why a lot of people like living here.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of naysayers, not a lot, but you've got some naysayers that can't stand this place or anybody that lives here. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to raise my family anywhere else.
Yeah.
We've got good schools. I live in a good community, and if I leave my house, people are watching my house,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way we still live up here or in the Panhandle. Is my neighbors take care of me, I take care of my neighbors.
Yeah.
And I know which vehicles goes up and down my dirt road.
Mhm.
They know which vehicles comes up and down their dirt road. So, and we laugh about it, but I mean, I can remember a conversation with my grandmother back in the day. We was sitting on her front porch and a car comes down the dirt road and she's like, I ain't never seen that car before. Who's that? I said, Granny, you sat on your front porch just to watch cars go by? She said, son, I pay attention to what comes up and down the dirt road, and that car's never been up and down this dirt road. And I'm thinking, Granny, you got to get a life. I mean, but yeah, that's the way we live, and that's our community. We still have good folks in our community, and all the communities throughout the county pretty much get along and have events or have something for somebody in their community. If somebody passes away or if somebody's injured, you'll see the communities in this county and in this city pull together and do fundraisers for this family, that family. I've seen 3 or 4 or 5 fundraisers going on at one time just because of sickness or illness, and the same people doing the fundraisers for 3 different people in 3 different neighborhoods or 3 different communities.
Yeah.
So we're just a tight-knitted community up here, and that's why people are moving here. I talked to a gentleman today that was from Palm Beach, and he he was from Pasco County, and he retired down there and was up here just riding around working with a sales company, and liked the neighborhood and had a friend that had retired and moved up here and decided, hey, this is a place for me. It's not the hustle and bustle, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could pull out on the road and probably not see anybody. Now you got to stop, look twice before you pull out on 79. So our community is growing. Our schools are growing. I heard Superintendent Brown the other day talking about adding another school or building a new school in Ponce de Leon and building a bigger school than what they have for their growth. So they're trying to get ahead of the curve. Everybody that they talk to, everybody we talk to, there's growth coming. It's not happening as fast as some would like, and there's some that don't want to see growth, because with growth there comes additional
Changes
and just a different perspective on our way of life. So we'd just soon keep it small, quiet, and peaceful. So, but we've got a lot of stuff coming, and over the next few years, I think you'll see a difference in the city, and I think you'll see a difference in the county.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about here is there's a lot of respect for the fellow man, and everyone's watching out for each other and their kids, and you just know what's going on.
Absolutely.
You mentioned there's some stuff that's coming soon. What are your main goals for the Bonifay Police Department under your leadership?
Our biggest deal is staying ahead of the curve. We've brought it forward quite a bit since I've been here. The objective for us at this point is to maintain what we've got, where we're at, but also look at the growth and just kind of stay ahead of the curve and make sure that the people we've got working here have the tools to do the job that they're asked to do, and make sure they're in good equipment and they've got all the tools in their tool belt to go to work and feel safe. And hopefully, if a bad situation were to happen, that the tools that they have on their belt protects them, keeps them safe, and they're able to go back to their loved ones at home. So that's our biggest concern and outlook is just trying to stay ahead of the curve. Because once growth starts, it can change within a year. I was a district lieutenant in Freeport, Florida. When I started as the district lieutenant down there was, 2 gas stations, 1 restaurant, 1 red light. And if you drive down there now, it's blowed up. There's stuff everywhere. I mean, 331 is wow.
Everyone's moving there.
And this 4-lane that we've got is fixing to, I mean, it's already causing traffic issues. You know, if you look during spring break and during the holiday seasons, our traffic here doubles just by people driving through. So with the expansions of the roadways and the way everybody uses Google Maps and travel with their GPSs, I mean, it's routing them through our little sleepy town that we love to call home. So it creates a traffic issue at times, but they see it, and even your business leaders and business folks that drive through, they see what's happening and they see vacant stuff, and it's like, we may need to start a business here because there's nowhere to build south. Panama City, Bay County, Walton County, all the beaches have grown so tremendously that there's really nothing or nowhere else left to build down there. Mm-hmm. So when you look at drive time, me and y'all, we can drive to Bonifay in 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. You can't cross Panama City in less than an hour and a half, 2 hours. So everybody's leaving the hustle and bustle, moving out.
Where it's quiet.
Yeah, I can drive from here to Panama quicker, and some of them can drive across Panama to work. So why live in that? I mean, I can come up here and have a little bit of land and not have a neighbor 6 feet away from me and be able to do some things privately that I want to do. So everybody's moving up here. So
you ain't always got to worry about the HOA fees up here.
No HOA fees for me.
What would you say some differences between working here at a local police department compared to like the Florida Highway Patrol when you worked there?
Well, with the Florida Highway Patrol, you got to think about the amount of area that you cover. Mm-hmm. So our district in the Panama City district was from Port St. Joe to Walton County. Oh, wow. And from the east and west was the River Bridge, which is the time zone, the Alabama-Georgia line. So, I mean, you see the way we've got it set up here is I've got 6 officers right now and 3 of them on shift. There's 1 on the day shift, 1 on the evening shift, and 1 on the night shift. But I have that overlap. With the patrol, they assign troopers to counties. So there's normally 1 trooper working Holmes County, 1 trooper or 2 troopers working Bay County, maybe 3 troopers in Bay, and 1 or 2 in Jackson. And sometimes we overlap with Washington County. So you were stretched thin, but you just pretty well much dealt with crashes, traffic-related issues, and assisted anywhere you could with counties or cities that are having speed-related complaints or stuff, because it's a political world. You've got agencies that will say, hey, y'all come over here and work traffic for us, and kind of we're having speed complaints here and here.
Help out.
What it does is it relieves those political guys out of the equation and puts the state in there that, they're working traffic. So it takes a lot of heat off of the sheriffs and everybody else that were political. So, or not political, but elected officials, I should say, because a lot of people just think, well, you're just out here writing people tickets. You're writing local people tickets. You're doing this, you're doing that. But at the end of the day, speed kills.
Yeah.
And some people see that, some people don't. But it's the difference in the call volume and the difference in the calls. Local agencies, whether it's a county agency or a city agency, are dealing with the domestics, dealing with the thefts and all that. So if it didn't happen on the interstate, didn't happen in a rest area, didn't happen on the turnpike or none of that good stuff, it was all handled by the county or city agencies that had the jurisdiction. So there was a lot of calls that troopers never see, that deputies see every day. So now you have what they consider an LRC class. You've got to have so many years of law enforcement experience. Then you can just lateral over to the patrol side in a reduced academy. So they're getting a lot of people from these smaller agencies because the state pays pretty good. I mean, they're paying quite a bit now versus what they used to. So they've come a long way, just like every other agency has. So a lot of these guys are leaving these smaller agencies and going with the state and making a decent living. So now they're getting troopers that know the ins and outs of a domestic, know the ins and outs of a burglary, and something happens in the rest area now, whether it's a vehicle theft or somebody broke in somebody's vehicle, they have a general working knowledge of how to take care of that case and run with it versus having to wait and hope the sheriff's office or a city agency takes over. And it's come a long way. But between the state and the local agencies, they've all come a long way. Used to, it was... my group, we all had a good working relationship with the state. So a lot of those old timers that are gone now, they're well missed because they were the backbone of the highway patrol.
Yeah.
And used to, it was a different world. So, but we've come a long way.
What did that transition look like for you going into the Florida Highway Patrol? How'd you get into that?
I always said I'd retire in Holmes County. So I had left for years and finally decided I had reached my retirement goals and I had done everything in law enforcement that I really wanted to do. And I seen their advertisements and a captain called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm working. Other than that, nothing. Why don't you apply?" I said, "Because I'm too far in my career to worry about it. But what do you think?" He said, "Well, just apply." So I applied, and there I went. So I was an old man in a young man's world at a state academy from people all over the state, and it was a little rougher on me than it was them because I wasn't as young as I used to be, and I've had a hard life at times, but we've come along. I can still feel the injuries every day I get up that I've had throughout my career, but it was a little rough. I mean, them 4 a.m. runs every morning, a lot of people couldn't do it. And then at the end of the academy shoot, we had a mud run, and I think it wound up being like 5 miles. And running ain't in me anymore. So I mean, you got to realize there's only so many beats left in your heart. And you don't want to speed it up. You'll never get them back. So it was good. I mean, I enjoyed that side of it. It just wasn't in my something that was meant for me to do in my earlier portion of my career. It was meant for the latter part.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've enjoyed every bit of it, done everything I wanted to do, and had a good time doing it. So we just rocked on with the academy and graduated that little deal. And shoot, when I come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, my wife thought I was crazy and lost my mind, because I wasn't that guy that was going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, put my sweatpants on and my tennis shoes and go running. But I knew when I got back after Christmas break, the first thing we were going to do was get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go running. So I would pack my little sweatsuit, and down the highway I'd go running. So I made it. I mean, I pushed through and done what needed to be done to fulfill my career. And a lot of times you just got to push through it. Don't matter how old you are, how young you are, you're going to face things that it's going to test your limits. And you can either give up and quit and go to the house and throw your sucker in the dirt, or you can push through it and have a good life and live it to the fullest. So I've been at the bottom and I've been at the top. And I've been in the middle of the pack trying to figure out whether I wanted to go to the front or stay in the back. Because a lot of times it's easier just to stay in the pack than it is to get out front and try to lead something, because then you're always the one at fault. So pace wasn't good enough. That's why our times wasn't good. So, or I can stay in the middle and let somebody else have the pace. So, but here we are.
What did a typical day look like for you as a FHP?
A lot of it's just riding around and working speed and crashes, distracted driving stuff. And then you had a lot of extra stuff that you done with the patrol, because at the end of the day, you were a state law enforcement community. So I was able to I was on their special response, or not special response. I was on a team that would go to the riots and do all that stuff. So back in, end of Trump's term, when everybody was rioting and having all that stuff go on, he came to Pensacola. So our team had to go sit, wait, and hope nothing happened. But I mean, we were geared up, suited up, sitting in somewhere close. But those were the good details. And sometimes those details were, they wasn't all that great. Because you had sat in a gymnasium with a bunch of other teams from different states, suited up, and it'd be 100 degrees, where you're sitting in there sweating, wanting to go outside and walk around. They don't want you outside and walking around unless something happens, because didn't want to spark the riot or get somebody upset. And here we go. Now everybody's got to come outside and play. So that was good. Probably going to the border about 3 years ago, that was wild. What that was. I mean, it's you take an old boy from Holmes County and send him to the border and say, hey, you got to protect the border, and this is what we're going to do. Okay. Well, me and a buddy of mine from Washington County, which is a trooper, I told him I wouldn't go without him. He wasn't going without me. So we got together, and they sent us out there for 2 or 3 weeks. And our patrols were, FDLE, there was agencies from different states there, but we handled everything from illegal border crossings, trespasses, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, everybody was assigned to a different group. And shoot, I think while I was there for 2.5 weeks, I think we had a pursuit about every night. And it was either a vehicle chase or a foot chase, or both.
Yeah.
I mean, because they didn't hang around when you stopped them; they left.
Yeah.
So that was probably some of the wildest times I think I've had, because I mean, it was, here they are and there they go. I mean, so I've seen some of what you see on the news when it comes to the border. I mean, when I left, there was some buses there, and we was asking some of the administrative people where these buses were going. They said they're going to beat y'all home. They're going to South Florida. So, and you've seen it in the news that they were busing people out and all that. So, and if you paid attention to the news here lately, you've heard them talk about Border Patrol being moved from the check stations and put in the office, shoveling all of these people around and just doing administrative work. They've took them out of the checkpoints. So they did that while we were there 2 years ago. And then they all told us we're coming in here to where we can get these people moved through the system and get them out. So that was wild. That was probably one of the best times I had.
So what did that look like at the border? Do you have any stories of stuff that happened out there that was just crazy?
I could tell you some stuff I seen that'd blow your mind. Some stuff that wouldn't go well here, and that wouldn't go well in the way these people were raised here. That you just don't do that. You could see across the border. You could see stuff that was going on. You could see things happening to people prior to them getting to the border that just blowed your mind. I mean, there was infrared videos and all that stuff where you was just checking and watching people, and there were some videos that just didn't sit well. I mean, and it was you hear everything that happened prior to the border and what they had to do to get across. I mean, a lot of that's true. I mean, there's video evidence out there that says these people were raped prior to them getting to the border, and that was their last ditch, was those acts prior to them getting brought across. And there's several videos out there that shed some light on it, I guess you could say. So I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's the small kids that get left behind, and you run people off, or you're on the river that night or that day, and somebody comes across and just drops the kid off, turns around and goes back across the river. What do? You know, it's a sick human being that'll leave a small child on the side of the river. The notes that you see on the news and all that is true. That happens. They send them across with their little tags on and contact numbers for relatives or friends or whoever they're going to, whether they've been sex trafficked or whether they've been going to a family member's home. Those contact numbers are attached to them. You just pick them up and take them to the local checkpoint and drop them off. I mean, there was a lot. It's going to change. I think it's already changed out there based on, we've got some troopers still out there. So I call them, check on them every now and then just to see if it's still the Wild Wild West like it was. And when I tell you it was the Wild Wild West, it was. I mean, I had a buddy of mine call me, and he said, Johnny, he said, I ain't never done such in all my life. He said, this is like a John Wayne movie. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the train's coming in across the border. If you jumped them, you ran them. And Jake's running across the top of the trains, jumping trains because they're running across the top of the train. So it was like a Wild Wild West movie. You open the side of the door on the train car, they'd bail out the other side. I mean, it was wild. But it was people trying to come get a part of our way of life. I mean, I love it here. I wouldn't live nowhere else. And some of them have good intentions coming across, some of them don't. And at the end of the day, there's a right way and a wrong way to come in. And
Absolutely.
I saw it, really didn't care about it till I got out there and seen what some of those communities were going through. And it opened my eyes to the world view, not just Holmes County view, because we don't see, that stuff just don't happen here. I mean, it's the bigger cities. We don't have stuff like that going on in our communities. It just, I think a lot of people would just assume that never happened here.
What do you think that taught you being out there, seeing all that?
Just to be thankful to live where I live, and I was raised the way I was raised, in the community I was raised in, because it's like going to a third world country. You don't know just how good you got it till you go, and then you're thankful to get back because you don't see how people live like that over there. So it'll open your eyes if you just go places. You just got to be willing to sit there and watch.
So you mentioned about everybody in law enforcement, they see some things as a deputy, as an officer. How do you deal with those things?
You got to be able to push a lot of it to the back. I mean, there's PTSD wasn't nothing you ever really heard of in law enforcement at all. It was all military style stuff. And there's reasons PTSD, you just, everybody pushes it back. Is there's a lot of things that happen if somebody says, okay, he's got PTSD, well, a lot of your insurances will not insure you because he's diagnosed with PTSD. Had a buddy of mine that was diagnosed with PTSD. His insurance dropped him. That's the side of this world that just don't make sense. Just because I'm diagnosed with something, you're going to drop me, and then I can't get insurance, or life insurance, I should say. You got to have a good family base, and have a partner that'll sit there and just listen to you. When you got to vent and not take it personal, and a lot of it comes back to your home life too. You got to have somebody at home that's willing to sit there and listen and say, okay, it's going to be all right. Because there's days in my career that I got off, went home, climbed into bed with my baby, and hugged and kissed her, and just thinking, what happened? What if this would have been? You can't do that, and it's hard sometimes, and you'll see things, and other law enforcement officers have done it too. I mean, it's one of those. You can't unsee a lot of the things you saw. There's still things in my mind that I can tell you from point A to point B, everything in between as far as what happened and all that good stuff. I mean, and it's wild that a lot of people don't think, well, how do you remember all that? Well, it's a traumatic deal, and you've never been a part of it. You don't understand it. So there's images and crime scenes, crashes, deaths. There's a lot of it still in your mind, and I can see right now one that's always stood out in my career, and it's hard to fathom some of the things that go on through people's mind and why they did what they did, or why didn't they do more. Because there's some that there's an image, and it's a crash, and it's a fire, and there was some people that burned up in the car, and it wasn't adults. So I can still see the car seats. I can still see everything strapped in the car seat, and then I can also see the parent that run away from the car. My exact words with him was, if that was my child, I'd be hanging in the window of that car, because I wouldn't want to live without my kids, period. But those are some of the things you see that you can't unsee.
Would you say that some of that has a role in you being more thankful for the family you have and the people around you? Yes.
I mean, it's the support system. I mean, who else can you vent to? We're not crazy. We're not psychotic. I mean, it's just who you've got to have. And that's why law enforcement, we're probably one of the highest divorce rates in the country. Life expectancy is 4 years after retirement. That's why I come back to work. So it's the stressors, and without having that support system at home, that's what leads to the divorces, because you want to talk, but you have to have that person to sit there and listen. Because when I go home, my wife really don't know why I'm agitated or what happened or none of that. You've got to be able to have that person to sit there and say, really? That's what happened? Yeah, that's what happened. How did that happen? And we just talk about it, move on. But a lot of times it's a fuss, it's a fight, it's an argument if you don't have that support system. So it's having the right people in your corner and not just pushing it back, shoving it back till you just can't do it no more. And then here you are, you know. That's the downfall to a lot of law enforcement officers in their careers. They push it back, push it back, push it back, and take it out on something else or take it out on somebody else. That's causes career-ending moves, and it's they didn't have that support system, or they didn't, have some type of medical support or a counselor or some psychiatrist, somebody they could talk to just to get it out. And they just pushed it back till that monster come out, and it ended your career. And then it's, what happened? Well, there's a lot that happened throughout his career that nobody knew about. So you have to pay attention to that. And that's where supervision comes in, and being able to recognize that and read people. Because if this person's this way today and is different tomorrow, what transpired within that 24-hour period or that year, what's made them different? Because people change. I'm not the same person every day. I try to be, but there's things that happen that you just don't feel good that day. But it's not a mental issue.
What advice would you have to the spouses of law enforcement officers or even their kids?
Just be patient. Understand what they don't know. That I don't tell my wife everything. I don't tell my daughter everything. There's just a lot that people just don't need to know about because they don't understand, or they wouldn't understand. And a lot of things that we see, they don't need to see, because then they're trying to picture it in their mind as to what I saw or what I'm trying to describe to them. So it's just don't hold them to a different standard just because something happened and they really don't want to talk about it. It's because they just don't want to relive it, and they're ready to move on. Because as long as it stays there, and you keep bringing it up, it's just be patient. It'll come out in its own time, in its own way, and just support them, because we see things nobody else sees. So it's there. It's going to be there. That's why it has to be a calling. This isn't something that you just wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to go be a law enforcement officer. And I tell these guys all the time that it's not a job. If you want a job, go work somewhere else. This is not a job. This is a profession. And it's got to be ran in a professional manner. You have to project professional values. You have to be that person that anybody can come up and talk to. Because if you're not that guy, you're going to miss something during an investigation or on a case, because you're projecting this type of personality versus being open to what everybody's got to say. Just because this person don't have everything in life doesn't mean they don't know something. So it's just be professional, be polite, and try to do your job to the best ability. And people will come to you and talk to you then. So a lot has changed throughout our career, my career. Is used to people would talk to you. Nowadays people don't. Cell phones and video games and everything else has ruined a lot of people because there's no people skills. Nobody really gets out and goes to the neighbor's house to play with their kids. People ain't coming to my house to play with my grandson or my daughters or any of that. It's just nobody. People skills have just left, so nobody really wants to talk to anybody anymore. Now, if you're willing to text them or call them on the phone, they'll be more than happy to tell you whatever you want to talk about, but they can't do that one-on-one stuff.
You mentioned this job being a calling. Was there anything that inspired you to go into law enforcement?
I'd seen a buddy of mine, Sean Miles. His dad was a trooper. For years, he retired from the Florida Highway Patrol. They were my neighbors, and then Sean was my buddy. That's where I hung out at during my elementary school years. And I just kind of thought it was neat. I always enjoyed listening to Ronnie's stories and hearing Jackie Baggett and them talk when they'd all come over, because a lot of them deer hunted together and hung out together. It was just that brotherhood that you could see that there was some camaraderie there, and they got along real well. And I went to the other side and was working in a factory. Didn't like staying inside, hated the inside, didn't like being locked up inside while I was working for 12 hours. Felt like I needed to ride around. So I called Mr. Ronnie one night. I said, hey, come pick me up. I was probably 14 years old, 15 years old, started riding with him at 16 years old. So a lot of people didn't know I was in the car with him, but I was in the car with him. So, and then it's just that one thing, whatever happens, that clicks. And we make jokes with folks now is the person riding with you, they want to see everything. They want you to get into everything. They want you to do this, do that. Let's get in a chase. Let's do this. Let's do that. Because they're not the ones writing the report.
Yeah.
You know. But if you do get into that, well, they're hooked. That's it. Everybody wants to drive fast until it comes time to drive fast. So I got in a little deal with Mr. Ronnie one night, and I was hooked from that day on. And Roger Williams, I remember him when I was a kid, was living up close to his mom and dad's place, and Roger was a trooper in Miami, so he'd come up, and I knew of Roger, just really didn't know Roger. But throughout my youth, I got to know Roger. His family is wonderful. I worked with him during the summer years at the church camp, so we were always pretty tight. So I had different people, that just brought me along. And with Dennis giving me the shot in '94, he could have just beat me down, thrown me out the door. I was just that guy. I mean, so we've had some interesting stories. He told me one night that we were having a driver license check over on 179, and me and John Tate was always, and Michael Rayleigh too, but John was my zone partner, my partner for most of my Holmes County career. So we would chase. I mean, it wasn't nothing for us to get in a pursuit. And we were having a driver license check that night, up on 179. And Greg Yancey told me to go get the sheriff's truck because that's where the generator and the lights was. And Dennis and them, they lived right up the road from me, so it wasn't nothing. And he was the sheriff, but it was Dennis to me. I mean, it just... I'd call him sheriff, but he was just Dennis to me. But I showed up. I told him, I said, hey, Sheriff, we need to borrow your truck. It's got the generator and the lights in it. He said, they sent you to get my truck? I said, yeah, I'm going to leave my patrol car and the keys with you. And just in case something happens, you can have some lights to come to us on. He said, all right. He said, but now look, there's just one thing. So what is it, Sheriff? He said, you can drive my truck, but you better not get in a chase driving my truck. Well, me being the guy I was, I told him, I said, I'll call you in about 20 or 30 minutes because I'm going to chase one on your truck. He pretty much told me it's going to kill me if he ever got his hands on me if I did. I said, all right. So I left his house, went up to meet everybody on 179, and I passed a truck just north of the campsites, and I thought, that's going to be interesting right there. So I turned around, going to check on the truck and just make sure there wasn't nothing going on with it. So when I pulled in behind it, he took off. So we're running, we're chasing, and we go through the campsites, and there's some trails through there that are rough. So as I'm chasing this guy, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I can see the generator and the lights coming above the bed of his truck and landing back in his truck. So I knew then, I said, he's going to kill me just as soon as he gets over here. So, but I mean, that's just, we had a good time. I mean, it was, don't tell me, hey, don't, because I would. And some of the old dispatchers are not old, but some of the dispatchers have been there for a while that knows if me, Michael, or John Tate said we was going to go chase somebody, we were 9 times out of 10 getting in a chase, because Michael's Rayleigh's wife, Tammy, me and Michael, I had done something. Anyway, me and Michael, for some reason, was paired up in the same car. And told Michael, I said, hey, let's ride up to Esto and chase one. He said, you know where one's at? I said, no, but there's one running drugs from up in Alabama coming into Florida. Is what the information I've been getting. I said, I know what they drive. I said, let's just go over and see if we can find them. And we walked out, and I told Tammy, Michael's wife, I said, hey, don't plan nothing, because you're going to need to be by the radio. And she could have killed us, but we drove from the sheriff's office here to Esto and past the truck that I had got the phone call on, and I was like, well, here we go. So, and then Michael, me and him had a love-hate relationship. He loved me as long as I wasn't driving his car. So, because I was rough on him. It was a tool to me, and I used it. So, but I've had a good career. I love it. Wouldn't change nothing. And then I have literally enjoyed the people I work with, and a lot of them that are still at the sheriff's office, but they're like I am now. They're in the executive side of it. So we get to teach the kid. They're the new folks coming up how it's supposed to be. Don't do it the way we did it, because you get fired today. I mean, it just, and it wasn't, we didn't do anything illegal. I mean, it was just, we're back to a family relationship, and it was, Dennis would pretty well much jump up and down, stomp his feet, and tell you what he was going to do. And then you just walked out of his office and you got what you got. So I mean, I had some write-ups. I had some letters in my file, and I deserved every one of them. But I didn't just throw my sucker in the dirt and hate the man the rest of my life. I mean, he was a family friend of mine for years. He was just trying to teach me the way it was I needed to be doing it. And, you know, I mean, that's when the drug world really started coming around, and a lot started changing in the way it was trafficked. So we were ahead of the drug curve a little bit, because he had 3 or 4 people that were willing to work it and push those issues. And we hammered them for a long while. And then all these drug initiatives and all this started coming out, where all these programs were started and trying to help the folks that were addicted. So, and then shoot, I was rodeoing back then too. So I was literally making more money going to a rodeo on the weekends than I was working at the sheriff's office. So
We're going to get into talking about the rodeo stuff in a minute and that part of your life. But I did have a question on something you talked about earlier, that you had that moment that you were hooked on that ride along. Can you tell anything about that story to us?
yeah, they were chasing some armed robberies, an armed robber out of Tallahassee that entered the jurisdiction of the Panama City District. And it was Rick Warden and Ronnie Miles and Jackie Baggett. And back then, I mean, it was the Florida Highway Patrol was not the people to be messing with. I mean, it was, they'd knock you off the highway or they'd shoot your tires out. I mean, Jackie Baggett, I believe, shot one standing on the overpass at the interstate, and it was another bank robber. So, I mean, it was the Wild West. And shoot, I've always been an adrenaline junkie anyway. So, yeah, it fit in right into my wheelhouse. So, I mean, man, a buddy of mine, I mean, the reason I say it is it's just an adrenaline deal. I mean, shoot, from fighting bulls to clowning to driving race cars, building tracks. I mean, it was just, we built a dirt track over there at a buddy of mine's house when I was in high school. And shoot, I should have died that day, but good Lord thought I needed to keep living. We built a dirt track, and Wade looked at me and said, I bet you won't hit it in fifth gear. And I hit that jump in fifth gear. I should have never done that.
So what all events did you do in rodeo?
Bull riding, bullfighting, and barrel man. I wasn't ever good at anything else. Really wasn't good at none of that. But
how'd you get into bull riding?
Well, prior to me deciding that it was time for me to be something, I was a young guy out of high school just wanting to rodeo. I mean, I was hanging out with guys rodeoing, and shoot, I'd go to rodeos with them, and I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the rodeo world. And I was working at Circle D. Slim Weeks, a buddy of mine, he was a barrel man, and me and Little Matt was hauling bulls to rodeos and still putting on PRCA rodeos back then. So if somebody turned a bull out, I'd get on it. I mean, shoot, let's just see what happened. I was the dummy back then. So, and the reason I say that is if I rode them, Matt Dryden Sr. would sell the son of a gun the next week. Because he told Little Matt, he said, if Johnny Whitaker rides anything we got, we're going to sell it. So, and he did. Everything I rode, he sold. So it was fun. And then me and Little Matt went to a rodeo one night up in, it was either Jasper or Tanny Hill, somewhere up around Birmingham. And the bullfighter didn't show up that night. Little Matt looked at me and said, you want to fight bulls tonight? I said, I guess. So I put on my little shorts and tennis shoes. I don't even think I had any cleats back then. And fought bulls that night. And after the rodeo was over, Little Matt said, you might have missed your calling. I said, well, buddy, I'll try it. So it wasn't long after that. I fought bulls for a while, and then I got married. In 92, well, I had known Rex Dunn through Lil Matt, Slim Weeks, and Rex was the man in the bull industry when it comes to fighting bulls and putting on bullfighting schools and all that. So it was Coyote Hills. So we went to the finals in 92 to the NFR. And like I said, I had met Rex back and forth over at Marion and through Slim. And told Rex after we got back, I said, look, when I get back to Florida, I said, I'm going to come back to your next bullfighting school. All right. So it wasn't long after that he had a bullfighting school. Went out there to that bullfighting school. And if you ever want to get killed off or learn something, Rex Dunn was the guy. So there was 2 or 3 stock contractors, and I can't remember who all brought bulls to that school. But Rex had a pasture full of Mexican bulls, and that's what we fought. That's what everybody fought back then. So Rex loaded every gosh blame bull he had and brought them to the arena that day. And they was 10 or 12 of us there. And we fought every young bull in that pen or in that truck, plus what everybody else had brought that day, because they were wanting to go through their bulls to see if they'd fight or see if they wouldn't. And if they didn't, it was just, here, we've got these guys at this school, let's just see what they all got. So, and a few got killed off, and some went to the hospital. I think the guy that won the student of the class or whatever award that was, the day we all graduated, that guy was in the hospital having surgery because he broke his collarbone. That was just, I mean, you had to get her to do something to win that deal, and that was, or the most improved. That's what it was. It was the most improved buckle of the school, and that guy, the last day. I mean, it was the last day because we was gonna have a little gathering and cookout that night, and that sucker got hooked and wound up going to the hospital, and he had surgery. He was at the hospital and in surgery, or fixing to go to surgery when they give him the buckle. I was like, wow, this is wild.
Sure is improving.
So yeah, so we went. We had a good time, but Rex finally got inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame, and I think his family still got some fighting bulls going. So it was wild. My clown act actually come from Rex's, because when we were out there, me and Slim he'd get a cow truck from Reynolds or somewhere, and he'd get a ride on a cow truck, and Rex would pick him up, and Slim would stay out there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then he'd come back to Florida on another cow truck. He'd call Reynolds or Parker or somebody and say, hey, you got a cow truck coming through, and he'd get on the cow truck and come back home. That's just the way Cowboys got around back then, was if you broke down, flag a cow truck down, because that's going east or west. So we was sitting out there at Rex's, and Rex was walking in and out of his barn, and he had Booger the Wonder Car back in the in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And he got talking to Slim, and they were talking about building an act, and he told Slim, listen, y'all need to go back to Florida and build an outhouse act. So that's what we did, and that's still a good act today. It's about being creative. I mean, people laugh at anything. If they'll laugh at me, I mean, they'll laugh at about anything. So I'd fight bulls and clown. I think I've got one February 7th and 8th in Bradenton. It's a bull riding down there. We'll go down there and just be me for a little while, and then I'll come back home and put on my serious face, and that's where I get to go and have a little stress relief.
What lessons did rodeo and teach you that you carried over into law enforcement?
Respect. A lot of it is the respect side of it, but you have to be you in the world of rodeo, because in the rodeo aspect of it is you've got committees. So it comes back to being a professional. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to project a positive vibe, I guess you could say, to everybody, because the committee is watching, because you've got to sell yourself to them, but you've also got to sell yourself to everybody in the bleachers. They don't know you from Adam, and that's the beauty part, is they don't know me, and it's they're not my critics. They're bringing their kids and their babies to the rodeo to see a professional event, and everybody's looking. Those little kids are looking. So it's taught me that at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, somebody else is watching. Does that impact their life? What you did or what you're doing, is it a positive impact on them? And when you're a rodeo, and if you don't leave a positive impact on a rodeo committee, you're not getting a call back. They're done. And I've seen it. It's wild. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to sell yourself. They're not going to come beg you because somebody else is going down the road too. They're looking for a rodeo, and if you can't sell it, you won't get a call back. Same thing with the job we're doing now is I've got to be able to sell this place to the community, and I've got to be able to sell this place to the city council. And the council's looking at the budgetary issues and how the community feels. And are we projecting a positive image on the community? At the end of the day, the people in the community, I'm looking at them, trying to make sure that they do have a positive outlook on the police department. Because if you lose your community, you lose your respect. And then that overflows into the council. And then that overflows into the whole entire city. And then you start losing your hold on the police department. So it's a respect thing, and at the end of the day, it's just trying to be positive and projecting that positivity to everybody you come across, because your bad day may be somebody else's good day. Somebody else has always got it worse than you do. So I just try to get along, have a good time. I'm to the point where I'm about ready to wind down, and after I get done with this gig here at the police department, it just wind down, retire, and enjoy life.
Yeah.
I've traveled. Like I said, about everything. I've done about everything in life that I wanted to do and have enjoyed it.
What do you think has been the most rewarding aspect of your career?
Retirement. But at the end of the day, it's making it. I mean, I can honestly say I made it. I've done this for 30 years and was able to retire. And I enjoyed it. There wasn't a day that I went to work that I just hated what I did. I always loved it. I mean, yeah, did we have our bad days? Yeah, we did. Did we have our little domestics in amongst the group we was working with? Yeah, we did. But at the end of the day, we're all still friends today. I mean, and we made it through without anything bad happening. Because a lot of times, I mean, and that's just being able to say I was a part of a community where the crime rate just wasn't out of the box. I mean, everybody they respected the law back then. I mean, people knew who you were when you showed up. I mean, it was, yeah, I got a warrant. So, but these bigger cities, I mean, I didn't, just being able to say my career was made and nothing really significant out of the unordinary happened. Because there's families out here that daddy, brother, mama, sister just didn't make it home. And I did. Stayed out for 6 months, and here I am. I got bored. There wasn't a whole bunch of adrenaline going on at the house. There was more stuff to do, I guess. And I just didn't feel like sitting at the house and doing all of it, so I come back to work. There's a lot to it. I mean, I got to see a lot of great people. Was able to be tutored by some great leaders. And you have to take a little bit from each person that you've been led by or been supervised by, and use what you've learned, put it to perspective in your career, and take a little bit from everybody and run with it. And that's what I've done. I've had some good bosses, and I've had some not so good supervisors. But I was able to get some education and be able to go to some classes and some training and learn some values and put that to good use and train some good folks now that are in leadership positions.
What advice would you give to someone who's wanting to pursue a career in law enforcement?
Think twice. No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's follow your heart. There's some that want to do it, but then when they get here, they just don't know if they really want it. It takes, and especially in our area, is we're not so populated and have the manpower for you not to be out here by yourself a few hours a night or maybe all night one night. Think about it and make sure that's what you want to do, because at the end of the day, just because you want to don't mean it's your calling. Because I firmly believe everybody has a calling. Some people don't follow that calling. And they're never happy. And if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's going to be a long, miserable career. And I can honestly tell you, it's I've done it exactly how I wanted to do it, and took bits and pieces from everybody I've worked for and put it to use. And here I am, still living, still breathing, still doing what I love to do. And between this and rodeo, and it'll always be in my heart, and it'll always be a part of who I am.
What legacy do you hope to leave behind in your career or just the community in general?
I want to make sure that at the end of the day, when I go home and call it quits forever, that I left this place in a better position than I found it. The community, I want them to understand and have that feeling that at the end of the day, I was compassionate. I took them serious, and I helped them any way I could, and have a level of respect that when I get done and I meet you on the street, I can shake your hand, look you eyeball to eyeball, and say hello, goodbye, how are you doing, and be able to carry on a conversation, because I don't want to have to look somebody in the eye and say, I done them wrong. Or I didn't respect them, they don't respect me. I just want to treat people the way I want to be treated, and hope they have the same feelings that I do, and that I wasn't the guy that sometimes you read about on social media, or, everybody has their opinions, but sometimes the guy that I'm portrayed to be, I'm really not. And as long as people can stand there and say, at the end of the day, he done a good job, he done what he said he was going to do, and you can believe the man when he said he was going to do what he was going to do, I'm good. At the end of the day, though, in this job, I make decisions that affect you for the rest of your life. Some of them good, some of them bad. But I want to do it professionally. And as long as the day's over and I was honest with you, I told you what I was going to do, and helped you to the best of my ability, I'm good.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Mr. Johnny, being part of the podcast.
No, man. Thank y'all. At the end
Pleasure
of the
having you.
day, there's a lot. I wished I could tell y'all a lot of stuff, but it would take longer than
It'd
what
take
we
a
had.
long time.
My rodeo career, I couldn't go pro, or couldn't get my PRCA card and be able to rodeo full time and work full time. I retired to do my rodeo career full time. 6 months later, here I am back in law enforcement. So, I mean, it's I could, but I can't. I just don't want to neglect my profession and leave these folks behind just because this is what I want to do. Between me and the good Lord, if this was what I'm supposed to be doing after my retirement, this wouldn't have never happened. So, as bad as I want to say my law enforcement career is over with, I want a rodeo. I can't. And I've got a lot of people that work here that's their biggest question is how long are you gonna be here? And I didn't plan on being here long. I didn't because I just wanted to rodeo so much, and I can be me there. I don't have to be. I can get out of this image. I can get away from the badge and the gun and there's Chief Johnny Whitaker. No, I just want to be Johnny.
Yeah.
That's who I really want to be. But the good Lord said, this is where I want you to be at this point in time in your life. So I'm still going to rodeo on the weekends. I ain't never going to quit. But and I've told the mayor that. I'm just like, man, look, I retired to rodeo. This is what I want to do. I said, but I see the good Lord's vision and where I'm supposed to be, but he never said it would be easy. It just, you're always supposed to follow his lead, his guidance, and his path. And if I go here, I'll be out of that wheel we was talking about. and I just, so he says I can do it part-time or I can still do this, but this is where I'm supposed to be right now. So he's still giving me a little bit of both sides. And as long as he does that, I'll be fine. When it all said and done, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just don't know what I'll do other than go home and enjoy life and spend time with my grandson. So,
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. Well, we enjoyed having you on, and it's a pleasure getting to know you more and talking more in depth about your career.
yeah, we never did get into the race car side of it.
Hey, we'll come back for part 2.
Yeah.